Hey everyone, Scott Hansen here from NFL Red Zone. I hope you're checking out 1 hour of 5 Yard Rush, one of the best podcasts on NFL football in the UK.
Good evening, Rush Nation. It is back with me on the head mic. Dan is working late on Wednesdays. Apologies for the delay. I was a little bit unwell on over the weekend and coming into the early part of this week, and so didn't do Monday because I did not think I could actually sit through an hour without constantly having to run off to, as I was teaching Joe earlier, the bog, which is the loo or the toilet or the lavatory or whatever kind of word you want to use, Joe. That's what bog means. So
okay, I knew loo, not bog.
There you go. I'm surprised Liam didn't teach you that one. So yes, that's a nice, disgusting way to start the show. But we are back. I have an amazing guest. Co-owner, managing editor of Fantasy Points, co-host of the Fantasy Feast podcast, and he's overall rankings king, best ball king, overall nice guy, F1 enthusiast, Philly native, Joe Dolan. Welcome back, my friend. How are you?
Murf, it's great to be with you. We actually were discussing. I've started to Murf. I really hope you don't feel like you're like a lab rat for me, because I am so utterly fascinated by British culture and British slang, and I have become, in case you haven't noticed, if you follow me on Twitter, and I've lost followers for tweeting about F1, which I don't care, it's my Twitter feed, I'm gonna do what I want.
Cool.
I have become obsessed with the word bell end, which, I mean, obviously, Murph, your listeners know what that is. But it's just a so much more colorful way to say dickhead, which is it's a very brash word in America, dickhead. But bell end, and so calling somebody a bit of a bell is I have become obsessed with it, and it is been reaffirmed. Christian Horner is the biggest bell end in the history of the world. Maybe not just F1, maybe the history of the world, but look, I'm not going to go out there and say I'm this refined Formula One fan who's been a fan of it since Niki Lauda was tearing tracks apart. No, I'm a Drive to Survive Formula One fan. I'm not afraid to admit that. But it's become a new love. And I'm glad I can chop it up with Murph about it, because you and I have been going back and forth, and it's is this guy a bell end?
And we agree for the most part.
George Russell is a helmet.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You won't catch me saying many nice words about George Russell. So my F1 fandom is really bizarre, because I was very much an F1 purist. So give me the late 80s, early 90s F1 racing. I grew up watching Ayrton Senna, Michael Schumacher, Damon Hill, Nigel Mansell, Alan Prost. And then for me, the technology took over the cars, and to the point where I think it pivoted too far, to where it was machine with man, not man and machine. Mm-hmm. So the last few years, I've really been quite negative towards F1. And people that are hearing me talk know how much I've been quite negative towards F1. But over the last year, I would say things have changed. And there's been three factors to that. One is Drive to Survive, which, by the way, is the best sports documentary series out there. It's better than All or Nothing. It's better than
Hard Knocks.
Anything. It's better than Hard Knocks. That was the one I was struggling to find.
I will say, Murph, just not to step on it, I thought the Colts in season 1 was as good as Hard Knocks has been in forever.
Oh yeah, Hard Knocks has been poor for about 10 years.
Having the in-season, the drama, was important to me anyway. But you get back on, because Drive to Survive is in season. That's what's important.
Oh yeah, but I mean, Drive to Survive is incredible. In terms of, I realize how badly F1 is covered in the media, because there's so many things that you miss if you're just a casual fan. So if you're someone who doesn't watch every minute of every race and the post-race and all the interactions with Ted Kravitz and all the others, you kind of get lost with the main storyline, which is Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen. They crash, they race, they win. And those guys won 20 races between them last year. That doesn't leave a lot of races for anybody else to win. So it's very much like regular sports media just covers those two guys. There's 18 guys that no one really cares anything about. So Drive to Survive massively changed my perspective. The title race last year, having actually it be competitive, was massive. But then the last one is the new rules and regulations, which have now made it that most of the cars, we saw this weekend, look relatively equal. There's some engine performance things, but it's the first time I can think of a start of an F1 season and thought, well, there's probably 6 guys that could win this race, realistically. Depending on what happens on the day, a little bit of luck. I know the Mercedes was slightly off and maybe not quite as competitive, but it's exciting now. Like F1 now with the new cars and everything is as exciting as it has been in 15, 20 years. Easy.
And one of the things that I always hurt me when I got into racing was like, and even with F1, and you see Lewis Hamilton, like obviously observing from the outside, I obviously know who Michael Schumacher and who Lewis Hamilton were. Like, they're these elite racing drivers, but like, I was always concerned. It's like, why would I just show up to watch a car, and like knowing what car is the best. And, I've started to like, but getting to being able for me as somebody who's like, why would I watch this when you basically know who's going to win? Yeah. Getting me to care about some of those other people is important, but also now, as you said, the regulations, it feels like if you're getting into it, you're getting in at a great time. Because, just thinking that like this car that they have this year is going to differentiate the drivers a little bit. Like it's going to be, you're going to know who the better driver is. And it's also going to bunch the cars together a little bit more. And obviously we're seeing, guys, unfortunately, I like McLaren. Unfortunately, they don't seem to have figured out the new rules just yet, the new regulations. But I'm hoping that a lot of these that this can get bunched up even further as the year goes on and as the cars even out. I can't talk about this like an expert. I just enjoy watching it. But I'm learning more, and it has led to my obsession with British slang. Because I mean, there have got to be more tweets calling Christian Horner a bell end than anybody else in the history of planet Earth.
But he is, and listen, the thing is, right, I didn't mind when people said karma for Red Bull after what happened with the title finish last year. There were a lot of people that are very angry with Max Verstappen last year, which I kind of think is a bit unfair because Max Verstappen was maybe the beneficiary of what happened with the title race and everything, but he didn't push the buttons, he didn't speak the race control, he was the guy in the car. And if you're going to give him an advantage, he's obviously going to take it. He's a racing driver. I don't think anyone can blame Max Verstappen for the way anything happened last year. It's more the Christian Horner and all that. But I'm glad. I mean, listen, comeuppance has been served, and I love it when Christian Horner is pissed because you could tell in the interviews in the aftermath of Sunday he was pissed. And
I was. Cackling.
And that's why it's going to be great. It's going to be great because
I mean, like we're like I was like when after Max retired and we're like, oh my God, Hamilton's going to catch Perez, and then he spun. I mean, my cackle must have been the shrillest thing that like it was unbelievable. But anyway, I mean, it's great. My Drive to Survive takes are extremely basic, by the way. I think Christian Horner's a bell. I love Toto Wolff. I love Gunther Steiner. I think Daniel Ricciardo is a dope who I would love to hang out with every day. Like, I mean, he's just like, he was, what was he? He said he was in LA and Checo was like, oh, I was in Mexico. And Daniel was like, was it winter or summer there? And I'm like, oh boy, Daniel. That's his version of Jared Goff not knowing where the sun rises and sets. Like,
oh, Lord.
But no, they're very basic take. I just like it. I'm a fan now. And, I'm glad that it seems like the really hardcore community has been welcoming because like not trying to gatekeep the fandom. I do see people who are like, oh, Drive to Survive is so fake. I don't care. It's entertaining. I don't care if it's fake. Christian Horner is playing it up. I understand that.
But it's like any sports documentary. You're always going to have an element of it that is played up. You're always going to have an element of it that is not what you want to see or what you want to believe happens. And there's parts that are fake conversations, like the one with George Russell and his girlfriend in the in the Shangri-La in the Shard in London. Like, I don't care. I don't care what George Russell has for lunch and he has his girlfriend. Like, I don't give two craps. That is something you can edit out of the show and you can put something else in. The reason why he was edited out of the early versions of the show was because he's boring. He is a boring individual. That's why. He moaned about it in Drive to Survive Season 3. He was like, oh, am I going to be in this for longer than 2 seconds?
Well, I got the impression, my wife and I got the impression when he was taking pictures with the fans, like, fans were coming up to him on the streets of London, I presume that was.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, huge fan taking a picture. And I said to my wife, I'm like, would he have taken the picture with those fans if the cameras weren't on him?
No.
He didn't. He didn't seem like that type of bloke, So
no, he doesn't seem like that type of bloke at all. So it does help that the cameras are on him. I think he was around Piccadilly. Also, it's like, so he goes from like Piccadilly to London Bridge to go and eat lunch. Like, that just doesn't seem very realistic. I know it's a nice fancy place, but yeah, it was a bit weird. But that's the staging part of it.
and look, I understand that it's not going to tell the whole story and everything, but it's a fan. I'm a fan. I'm glad. I would love, for people to get interested in fantasy football because of hard. I mean, I'm sure even in the UK, football is still it's probably more omnipresent than F1 was here in America. Yeah, I'm guessing. Just like it. It's just one of those things you either like or you don't. But, over the last 10, 15 years, soccer has become much bigger here in the United States. Just like, with the women's national team here has helped a lot. But like getting the Premier League package here and now we're getting races added here in America. Murf, as a matter of fact, my wife and I were looking to go to one. By the way, they're very expensive to go to.
Oh, yeah.
We were, but
not cheap.
We can't do it this year. We're going to go to Miami, which is first this year, and next year we're coming over your side of the pond. We're going to be in Barcelona, but I want to go. I want you to show us around your neck of the woods and maybe catch some Premier League. But we're adding one in Vegas, I think.
Oh wow,
next year as well. I mean, you want to talk about a weekend? Have you been to Vegas?
Yeah, I've been to Vegas a couple of times.
Oh my Lanta. That is gonna be that's gonna be a lot of fun. They're adding a third American race in Las Vegas. So yeah, we're gonna have plenty of opportunities. It's growing here. I know people are starting, I think Verstappen and Checo aren't participating in Drive to Survive next year. Oh, it just causes up. I certainly would think Formula One wants the show to continue because it is not there is no people are not at all worn out on it here. People are just really getting into it.
And it's big here as well. And I think, the fact is that it's a sport that is somehow figured out how to tap into an audience and find a new way to project into it. And is now making a lot of changes that is going to welcome even more fans and disgruntled fans like me who haven't watched it for the best part of 10 years, get back into it. But
they're doing a PGA Tour version, and they're doing, I believe, a tennis version now as well. Like these individual sports with these characters who have to, for their entire life, be just utterly obsessed with getting to the best level of it. I think those probably work as well, but I don't know if you had heard about that, but those are coming as well.
No, there is the All or Nothing series has moved into the Premier League. So last year was Tottenham, this year's Arsenal, which everyone made a lot of fun of early in the season when the team was hit with COVID and they lost a lot of games early and were bottom of the league. And now they're rising up through the field in fourth place. And it doesn't seem so funny to people anymore that this has been documented. But it's I think it's going to be an interesting take on what goes on in the Premier League. I found the Tottenham one to be a bit fake. So I'm hoping that this one is a bit more real, especially as it's my club. But we're 15 minutes into a fantasy football show and we haven't talked any NFL, including huge news coming out this evening here, this afternoon, your time, Joe, and it's Tyreek Hill is now a Miami Dolphin, and this thing unraveled in the press in like warp speed. I mean, it just like he went from talks have broken down to 30 minutes later, it's the Jets and the Dolphins, to an hour later, he's a Dolphin. Like 90 minutes, it went from talks broken down to he is a Dolphin. It's done.
Let me see this, okay? Because I tweeted this morning, my time, that we had updated our free agency rankings here. Okay, so with the free agency and wild trade market finally settling down, this is what I tweeted. Finally settling down, we've pushed a massive update to our staff best ball rankings, okay? This is at 10:52 a.m. my time, which I believe because of daylight savings is 2:52 p.m. your time. Okay, so that's 10:52 a.m. Ian Rappaport at 11:04 a.m. tweeted, despite an offer from the Chiefs that would make superstar Tyreek Hill one of the highest paid receivers, extension talks have stalled. That was at 11:04 a.m., literally 12 minutes after I made that tweet. So it is my fault. It is my fault that trade happened. And then it was the Miami trade came down. Adam Schefter said it was Jets and Dolphins at 11:12. And then I think it was like 12:30. And then it was over. Just unbelievable.
Massive. And the thing is as well, I've had a little bit of time to process this instead of it being something that's just happened. And you know, this is an interesting one because I wonder if COVID-19 hadn't happened, the pandemic hadn't happened, the salary cap shrinkage hadn't happened when they signed Mahomes and Hill to their original deals. Yeah. I can't help but think if those things didn't happen, Tyreek Hill would have signed a bigger deal than what he's got now, or roughly the same, and he'd still be a Chief. This wasn't the fact that he was disgruntled with the Chiefs. He just wanted the final payday. He's 28.
He wanted his money. He's arguably got a skill set that doesn't age particularly well. You know, I always wonder about that. Like, people are like, oh, he's slow. So as he gets older, he's going to get slower. That's not going to age well. Oh, or he's really fast. He's going to get slower as he gets older. That's not going to age well. I'm not really sure what the case is, but the fact of the matter is you're playing football here. You're going to get hurt probably at some point. And, you know, it's just kind of odd how the dominoes fall. You can make the argument that the Raiders trading for Davante Adams and signing him to the contract they signed him to essentially forced the Chiefs to trade Tyreek Hill.
Yeah.
You can make that argument. Now, I seriously doubt the Raiders had that thought when they made that deal. But, like, Tyreek Hill's like, wait a minute. I'm younger, and to him, he's better than this guy. I've been to a Super Bowl. I've been to 2 Super Bowls. I've won a Super Bowl. Why am I not getting this money? Well, Tyreek, we can't pay you this money because we're paying Patrick all this money. Well, I don't care. I already have my ring. I want the money.
Yeah.
Extensions break down. He's in Miami. And, like, you know, and you say, like, there's a million things you can say, you know, about Tyreek Hill and his past that really make this kind of another blight on the NFL, especially since Deshaun Watson was traded earlier this week. You know, like just another blight on the league after bidding wars for these two characters. But, you know, he's thinking, like, I've got my ring. I've made 6 Pro Bowls. You know, I want my money. And that's his prerogative to feel that way. You know, it's his prerogative to say, I want to go play with Tua as opposed to Mahomes because they're going to pay me more money. That's certainly his prerogative. But from a fantasy football perspective, Murph, I mean, I don't even want to know what this does to my rankings because, you know, I have Tyreek Hill in my first round. He's not in my first round anymore. Now, I totally believe Mike McDaniel is going to manufacture touches for Tyreek Hill in the same way he did for Deebo Samuel. But I thought they were going to do that with Jalen Waddle too, right? So now, all right, you might have 2 guys who you can do that for, but which guy's better for fantasy? You know, Tua is much more of a dink and dunker than Patrick Mahomes. That goes without saying. I mean, everybody's a dink and dunker compared to him. There's so much to unravel. Who is the Chiefs' number 1 wide receiver? Well, Juju. Yeah, he can catch 100 passes, but Juju's not averaging 15 yards a catch. It's not going to happen. You know, it's so there's so much to unravel here. I was the hot take artist on our staff. I was the one who had Mark Andrews as tight end 1 instead of Kelsey. That's out the window.
Yeah,
Kelsey's got to be tight end 1 now, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so I was like, hey, I'll take the discount on Andrews again. I'll be glad about that. But I have to, in good faith, I have to rank Travis Kelce as my tight end 1 when I go in and do the rankings. I mean, this is like, 2 trades in the span of a week have blown up 2 guys who are first round wide receivers. I had Devontae Adams in my top 5 overall. I had to move him down. I had to.
Yeah, absolutely.
I still have him in my first round, but Tyreek's going to fall farther than that. I can tell you that. He's a second rounder. I had Waddle, I think my 24th overall player. Oh, man, I'm going to drop him at least a round, if not more than that. I mean, it's tough. As somebody who has Jalen Waddle for Dynasty, I did not want to see this happen. I really did not.
And the thing is as well, so now I've been thinking the same thing all day, and I have to think that Travis Kelce replaces Tyreek Hill in the first round.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah.
I had Kelce. Let me see where I had Hill, because I frankly, I have not updated my rankings just yet, because I'm like, now what the heck? Well, like, here's the thing, what's going to happen, because you'd think Devontae Parker's the odd man out here, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, Devontae Parker is pretty much now irrelevant from a fantasy football perspective.
Yeah,
they're not going to throw the ball enough for three wide receivers to get some balls.
What if he ends up in like Philly or something? That might be, because Philly apparently, when it came out that Tyreek Hill was on the trade market, everybody's like, well, Philly apparently, Murf, as you might know, I don't know, the Jay Glazer report, that they essentially had traded for Calvin Ridley. But the Falcons, in a show of utterly good faith, said, no, you can't do this. Like, and then, Philly was in on Allen Robinson, didn't land him. And I think a lot of people were like, Philly, Tyreek Hill, like he's going to be the guy. Like, this is where you got to put Tyreek, and then it comes out Philly just didn't want to pay for him. Maybe Devontae Parker ends up in a spot like that. Maybe he ends up in Green Bay. But you'd have to think Devontae Parker's sitting here thinking, okay, Waddle was your top 10 pick. You've just made this guy the highest paid wide receiver in football. You just signed Cedric Wilson this offseason. Mike Gesicki's your franchise player. Where are my targets coming from? And I think that's probably fair.
But here's the other thing as well, is they paid Cedric Wilson in free agency a significant amount of money, and you have to sit there and think now, well, that's a questionable move, given that you've now just... Because you look at it and you thought, if you held... Cedric Wilson, if you picked him up tail end last season, he performed for you, all on the hope that you thought he would stay. Because it looked like it was going to be Cooper and Wilson would stay. Gallup would be the odd man out. They couldn't afford to keep him. He would go. And you're thinking, well, okay, arrow up on Wilson. Instead, they get rid of Cooper. Gallup gets paid. You think, okay, well, this is just as good. We'll have Lamb, Wilson and Gallup, like happy days. And then you think, well, they'll support that. And then it turns out they're not going to pay Wilson. He gets traded to Miami. You think, well, okay, that's not bad because he's playing alongside Tua. There's, he'll probably edge out Parker with his contract. He'll play with Tua. He's gone now. He's not fantasy relevant. You can't, if you have got Cedric Wilson in a dynasty league, he's now effectively worthless.
Yeah. And by the way, here's the thing about Gesicki when it comes to Cedric Wilson. Mike Gesicki played fewer than 100 snaps as a tight end last year.
Yeah.
He was a slot receiver.
Yeah.
So Cedric Wilson, either he eats into Gesicki eats into him, or both. And I mean, you have to wonder, now they paid Cedric Wilson. So could Gesicki be on the move here? I mean, there's a lot to unfold here, but it's a blow to Gesicki as well, because you would think, all right, Cedric Wilson, I thought he was a good receiver. I think he's a good receiver. I thought that was a decent move, but now, I mean, everything blows up unless all of a sudden you're going to have Mike Gesicki playing as an inline tight end, which is something, like, quite frankly, Murf, I mean, he didn't do. He played over per Pro Football Focus. He played over 800 snaps last year. Basically, 11% of them were as a tight end.
I know, it's crazy, isn't it? You just sit there and think, what's he going to do?
Yeah, there's a big blow to him.
I mean, Miami now probably are the hardest team for fantasy rankings because the running back room's a mess. You got a bunch of guys with Mostert and Edmonds, and you've still got the running back room from last year that's there. you've got Gesicki, as you mentioned. You've got this wide receiver room's really confusing. How are you supposed to sit there and unpack that? And then you've got somewhere like Atlanta, where you've got Christian Blake as a starting wide receiver.
Zacchaeus. Oh my
God.
God.
Zacchaeus and Christian Blake is your starting wide receivers. Marcus Mariota throwing the ball.
It's
not fair, is it?
It isn't.
Not fair.
I saw the AFC odds come out, by the way, and these probably have adjusted since then, but soon after the trade, the Dolphins still had the 12th best odds to win the AFC. The AFC, not the Super Bowl. It really is loaded up. And, you're looking at Tom Brady sitting there. He's got to be cackling.
Oh, yeah, he is.
He's got to be laughing.
Tom Brady's just send everyone out.
I see your shirt there, Murf, by the way. I know.
Oh, yeah.
You were pressed for all of 3 weeks.
Still there. Still enjoy it. The thing is, right? So here's a funny story. That the day that Tom Brady officially retires, I got asked to do an event with an ex-NFL football player here in London and a presenter from Sky Sports. And I got asked about, how do you feel about, what's happened? Well, listen, I've taken it. It is what it is. It's fine. And then I made the bold statement we were still going to win the NFC South anyway, because the NFC South is an absolute. I mean, it's in the gutter. Yeah. It's an awful division. So you're like, well, whoever they get a quarterback, as long as it's someone who can throw the ball and not turn it over 30 times, they're probably going to be okay. And lo and behold, everything's just parted. Literally, there's now two teams. Dallas have got worse. Green Bay have got worse. The 49ers still a bit confused with what they're doing.
Yeah, they might not.
The Cardinals have got an unhappy quarterback and they've lost some receivers. Really, you're looking at this. It is a case of it's going to be the Rams and the Bucks, really. At this stage, things can change, but what do you do? It's just the NFC just is depleted. Russell Wilson's gone. Devontae Adams is gone. All these receivers are just, all these star players have left the NFC. It is literally becoming like a major league, minor league situation. And it's just that the NFC has a couple of stars.
How about the fact that the Broncos traded 2 first-round picks for the third best quarterback in their division? Say what you want, but if I'm trying to win a game tomorrow, I'll take Mahomes and Herbert. And I know you could throw it out there. Well, Herbert hasn't done it. I understand that, but I just, from an aesthetic standpoint, from a talent standpoint, I think Herbert's got the edge on Wilson. Wilson, you pop him back in the NFC, he might be the third best quarterback in the conference.
Oh, yeah, he is. Absolutely. Or fourth. It's him and Stafford for third.
Right. Essentially, you got Brady and Rodgers. So, it's unbelievable. That's going to take a lot of time to unpack. But anyway, I'm looking at my best ball rankings. Believe it or not, Murph, I actually had Tyreek Hill out of the first round. Which I don't know. I had him. Here's who I had above him. Besides the obvious, I had Jefferson at 8. This one probably would have been controversial. Debo at 9. Okay. Najee Harris at 10. I dropped Devontae Adams to 11th, and then I have Kamara at 12, and I moved Kamara up because they brought Winston back.
Yeah.
And Winston, I think, is good for Kamara because he's going to run a more traditional offense there than if you have freaking Taysom playing. And then I had Tyreek at 13. He had some up and down games last year, and I had Kelsey all the way down at 27 because I had Mark Andrews. I swear I might just flip Hill and Kelsey in my rankings the way I look at it right there and say Hill now becomes a second, third round type of guy. Kelsey's that borderline first and second round type of guy. And then I have to move Waddle down because I am going to have Waddle below Tyreek Hill.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's going to be the conventional opinion. But, the question is Tua. And you have Teddy there. Okay. Teddy had a pretty good year coaxing numbers out of Curtis Samuel and DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson in Carolina, but he couldn't do the same last year in Denver. Couldn't do it. He's obviously an insurance play for Tua here, but going back to the scouting reports on Tua when he was coming out, and I remember Greg Cosell saying, this is not a high-level traits prospect. What he is and what he can be is a high-level accuracy prospect with high-level processing. if he gets there, he can have a career that resembles, obviously you have to project your best case scenario that resembles Drew Brees. Because Drew Brees was not a high-level traits prospect, and he was never a high-level traits player. And now the question becomes, if Tua can't show that, and you don't have to be 100% Drew Brees, all right? 75% of Drew Brees is a guy who's going to play in the NFL for a decade.
Yeah.
If he can get there, he now has the weapons. He's going to be a very fascinating player for fantasy because in the range of outcomes is Teddy Bridgewater starts half the games this year. That's in the range of outcomes.
Oh, absolutely. And the thing is that Tua is under huge pressure because not just because of all this investment that's gone in around him, but they fired their last coach over him.
Mm-hmm.
Brian Flores was not fired for results. He was fired because he did not want Tua. He did not believe Tua was going to be the player that took them on long, consistent playoff runs. And so that's why he wanted Watson. That's why he wanted a change. Now, listen, you can question his integrity as to why he wanted Watson and all of that jazz, right? Whatever.
Yeah, for sure.
But there was something that in his 2 years of coaching the team, he didn't want Tua. There's something he didn't like, whether that's politics, whether it's managing the expectations, And the other thing is, of all the quarterbacks that started in the NFL, exclude the teams where they do captain by committee every week. Tua was the only significant starting quarterback that wasn't a captain in the NFL last year. So
Jalen Hurts was a captain.
I know,
made all of 4 starts.
This is what I mean. Like it's almost like a de facto position. So when you look at all of that, you think, well, okay, they've backed Tua, fine. You got to back a horse in a race. They backed Tua. They've now given him every weapon under the sun. They now have, on paper, one of the best offenses in the NFL. Definitely top 6 or 7. You'd have to say with what they've got. So yeah, the pressure's on him. If he does not perform, Teddy Two Gloves is going to come in and play a few games because someone's got to. The expectation levels of this team with Tyreek Hill today is we got to win the division, which isn't going to be easy with the Bills and the Patriots. The Patriots are a receiver or two away from really competing in this division.
Yeah,
they've got
very,
the D,
very
they've
much
got the
so.
quarterback.
Very much so. Yeah, I mean, Tua. Look, you're 100% right about Tua. Not to rehash the whole old arguments, but like this was a big organizational line in the sand. They put their foot down because I remember Scott Barrett. He does his post-draft press conferences article where he goes through and listens on basically every first day, second day skill position player and wants to hear what the coaches have to say. And this is literally we are talking 2 weeks into the life of fantasypoints.com. I hadn't been working with Scott that long. And he pops it in our Slack. We use Discord now, by the way, but at the time we used Slack, and he's like, you guys are going to think I'm nuts. He pops the article in here and he says, I try to make takeaways, and I think this is pretty accurate. And he's sitting there and he pops this article in here and he's like, read the Miami section. And he's like, because I don't think they like Tua. He said he thought Brian Flores was at a funeral when he was talking about Tua. Turns out he was 100% correct.
Nailed it.
And this is where I was so on Tua because there was a lot of this is fandom. It's not just NFL, it's NBA. NBA is really bad about this. But stan culture on Twitter, there was a very active Tua stan culture. But let's look at the facts here, man. This is a guy who, as a rookie quarterback, was benched multiple times in game without an injury. Okay? So they are bringing in this coach very specifically to say, this is our quarterback. Now, do I think McDaniel might be able to do this? Yeah, but from a Tyreek Hill perspective, in Kansas City, he had both the short stuff that he could take long and the long stuff that really had to keep a defense honest. They're going to have to prove right now that they can stretch the field, that defenses are going to have to be kept honest because Tua has not shown that. So I think defenses are going to try to condense around the line of scrimmage a little bit more. Oh, you're going to try that Rudy Poo, Debo Samuel stuff all the time? Well, beat us over the top or else we're sticking 8 in the box. And now it comes down to Tua. And look, we know what Bridgewater is. Bridgewater isn't going to win you games. But here's the other factor, and why this is such a referendum on Tua this year. They have 2 first-round picks next year. They did not have to trade one of those picks in this deal. So you're now one of these teams that has, and already there's 2 guys who everybody's talking about next year. CJ Stroud at Ohio State and Bryce Young at Alabama. Everybody's talking about them. And as you well know, somebody from Bell End State University is going to come out of nowhere and put up big numbers, and there's going to be another name thrown into the ring. I will guarantee you nobody was talking about Kenny Pickett last year, all right? I'm from Pennsylvania. Pitt is the little brother in the state of Pennsylvania. And nobody was really talking about Pickett. So there's going to be somebody there, and now you're armed up. Tua, this is, hey, man, everybody said it on Twitter. No more excuses for Tua. Why has everybody said it? Because it's obvious. Yeah. But when you're looking at playing best ball, though, man, you do have to ask yourself, well, what if things do go right? He could put up some solid numbers this year, man. I mean, if things do go right, and he does become that distributor that he was at Alabama, there's a chance this does go well for them. They signed Teron Armstead. They're bringing in offensive linemen. They have some semblance of a run game now with Edmonds and, well, the Raheem Mostert is
special.
I mean, he is a walking rhetorical question, right? Like, I mean, is he, is he going to be there? Is he not going to be there? Like,
I feel like someone should get like a hat with a big Q that's attached to it. Just because he's always questionable on an injury report, right?
Yeah, he was the Riddler in the new Batman movie.
That's exactly it. He's just the ultimate Riddler. He's like, there you go. He can.
Hey, your boy Bobby Patz did a hell of a job, by the way. He was actually, this is the 2nd consecutive English Batman. Oh no, I'm forgetting about Ben Affleck.
Yeah, you forgot about Affleck in the middle.
I never saw those movies. I've
not seen the new Batman, but yeah, I mean,
Robert Pattinson did a hell of a job, by the way. So put that on your list, Murf, because that was a heck of a movie. Yeah.
I'll put it on the list. It's only just come out in cinema here, like within the last week and a half. So
oh, really? Was it out in America first?
Huh. Yeah, I think it was out in America first.
Well, it's really good. You should go check it out.
Yeah, I'll add that one to the list for sure. Let's talk about you've mentioned best ball, and that's why I want to get you on here, because you play a lot of best ball. We've had you on before. We've talked about you use best ball to help you formulate your rankings and your projections, and you kind of get an idea for prices and use it as your kind of preseason to get your draft mojo on. And I do something very similar, so I completely respect it. And last year we did a bit of a masterclass, and if viewers we've picked up a lot of new listeners in the last year. If you missed the show with Joe last year, I think it came out around April. I'll retweet it out anyway. Listen to that. There's a lot of really good stuff. But I wanted to kind of do a 102 on best ball, just to chop up, because best ball and best ball is now in the UK probably the fastest growing form of fantasy football outside of Superflex dynasty leagues, because what people did in 2020, especially here in the UK, with severe lockdown, was people drafted a load of dynasty teams, far too many dynasty teams, didn't realize best ball was really a thing. So drafted a load of dynasty teams, then got left with too many dynasty teams to manage, and therefore dumped a load of orphans, and then leagues died and whatever. But people want to draft and not have to manage a team, and therefore now best ball's big enough. The problem here in the UK is platforms like Underdog and things like that aren't here. So it's DraftKings, which is pretty poor, Yahoo, which is pretty poor, or you get people like myself and next week's guest, Tom Bestball UK on, and a few others who put together best ball leagues for people just to draft and do things. So in terms of the fact that people now are getting more into it because of the fact they need to draft and sort of scratch that itch, and people are doing it more and more, let's make sure that people get, much better at it and better. So the first question I always get from people, and this is the one I'm going to pose to you, is it's a completely different game. It's a completely different game. And people always ask me about best ball. Like, is it just the same as redraft and dynasty? I'm like, no, it's a completely different game. You got to approach it differently. You got to strategize for it differently. What would you say is the biggest thing you have to change from getting out of that redraft or dynasty mindset to play best ball? What are the skills you need in order to really be successful?
Well, I think first and foremost, and this is, I'm not going to be breaking any news here, but I think stacking is so much more prevalent in best ball. Like if you're going to take down a total points league, especially one of these big multi-league tournaments, these big entry tournaments, you're going to need to maximize your scoring potential. And when you're playing week-to-week fantasy football, well, for sure, sometimes that's going to work if you have RIP, Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill. But what if it's one of those games where Tyreek Hill catches 3 passes for 14 yards, which he had last year a couple of times, not exactly that, but didn't get in the end zone. Mahomes had a down game. That's going to hurt you. So I think it's much more viable in a best ball format. One thing that I am really starting to warm up, though, and honestly, I think I'm warming up on this in most formats, the value of an early quarterback is now. I mean, I've got Josh Allen right on the borderline of my second round here.
Okay.
And I think we had an article by Jeff Henderson at fantasypoints.com where he used his own proprietary fantasy wins above replacement stat to essentially deduce that Josh Allen is worth a first round fantasy pick in 2022. And the thing he thinks that is very actionable about that is he doesn't think you're going to have to spend a first round draft pick on Josh Allen. So, you could still use a little game theory and a little bit of essentially manipulating the system to say, I'm going to get a first round pick and I'm going to get Josh Allen, who's worth a first round pick. I'm starting to get all in on that kind of thinking. But my most successful fantasy teams last year in best ball, and I don't know if this is going to be the case this year, had Mark Andrews on them. And the thing is like, obviously Kelsey was pretty good for fantasy, but Darren Waller was a massive bust. And I'm wondering if I was successful with those Mark Andrews teams simply because the Darren Waller and for the most part, George Kittle teams were essentially eliminated from the get-go with how poorly those seasons went in terms of injuries or usage or whatnot. So I'm really have gotten into the draft a quarterback and tight end kind of early, maybe one or the other. I think that's something that I've really been good at. But you also mentioned DraftKings. I totally agree with you. I don't think the user experience with DraftKings is as great as Underdog. And I'll tell you one thing. Have you you don't have Underdog, but have you played on it? I mean, have you had the opportunity? Yeah, okay.
We actually can't. There's no actual way to do it.
Yeah. Hopefully that comes soon. Because it really is a great app. But here is one of the biggest problems. And something that you can exploit. And maybe they'll fix it this year. DraftKings push notifications on their best ball drafts are atrocious. Sometimes, you might be, playing with your bell end, and you're like, hey, I'm going to do a draft while I'm doing that. And you found some content that you thought to be particularly interesting and you kind of forgot. Well, here's the thing. Underdog's notifications. I have my notification. That's my old boy Stanley, by the way. My Underdog's notifications are perfect. They pop up as soon as you're picked. DraftKings sometimes gives you 10 seconds to make your pick at that. I will tell you, I think DraftKings ADP and their push notification system is exploitable. Because if you're actually active on DraftKings and you're watching every pick, I think you're going to have an advantage because there's going to be multiple auto picks. And that happens in every best ball draft. But DraftKings, if you're doing a fast draft, 30 seconds per pick, I guarantee you are going to miss some picks if you aren't paying 100% attention. That's particularly exploitable. But there's another thing I got to throw out to you, Murf, and I'm going to be honest here, and I'm glad I haven't done it. I am a militant. Do not draft best ball until after the NFL draft guy. I don't do it. A couple years ago, I did it, and I got massacred. All right. It was a bloodbath. And, I said, I'm in the advice business, so I'm going to give advice that I gave myself. Don't do it. Like, and there are people who vehemently disagree with me. Like, oh my God, what if you got this rookie in the 18th round last year and then he was a second round pick and and that's totally fair. That's totally cool. But like, I'm thinking about the futile exercise I've had of doing these theoretical best ball ranks. What would I do if I were in a best ball? And I've been ripping my hair out. And the one thing that I do is like, I sit down and after the draft and I can take a deep breath and take all my information the information that I have gathered over the last month and a half heading up into the NFL draft, because you're formulating opinions with every single move that is made. Okay. You know, we just talked about Tyreek Hill. I did not wake up today anticipating that I would be talking to you about Tyreek Hill on the Miami Dolphins.
No,
I did that. That was not in my, like you said earlier in the podcast, and I tend to go on tangents here. I'm sorry, but earlier in the podcast, you said, this was it was shockingly quick. For a bit of an off-color comment, it felt like we were driving through Dealey Plaza. I mean, just like a wave, a monumental wave that happened in seconds. Essentially, it was very much unlike the Deshaun Watson thing, which. Like, I mean, I tweeted last week, I'm sick of Deshaun Watson, but it was true. And I mean, I was sick of the whole thing. I was sick of, how long it was taking and how that was clogging up the pipes, so to speak. Well, those pipes have come unclogged, but, I'm just thinking here, yes, there is an advantage to playing best ball, getting guys, capitalizing on uncertainty. For instance, I was looking at, Underdog's ADP yesterday, and over the last 2 weeks, Leonard Fournette, his average draft position was like in the 7th round. All right, what? You could have drafted Leonard Fournette in the 7th. He's a 2nd round pick right now, Murph. I mean, back in Tampa Bay, there's an advantage there. But what if you took Tyreek Hill at 6 overall?
Yeah.
So a lot of luck of the draw comes into that, and yeah, look. I do all kinds of stuff where, I like to go to the casino and shoot craps. Okay. Yeah. Luck plays into it, but like, I like to have a little bit more certainty in my best ball. So that's why I've had a lot more success waiting until May 1, just after the NFL draft, maybe even after the first 2 rounds of the NFL, or first 2 days of the NFL draft, when most of the big time skill position players are in place, that's where I've had a lot of my success. And that's just how I approach it, because I look at, I'm scrambling with these rankings. And I mean, that Tyreek Hill thing came out of nowhere.
No.
I mean, it's just really, I'm still reeling from it.
And the thing is as well, with the way that these dominoes are falling, it's every 2 days now there's a significant trade in the NFL. And we're not done. Jimmy G is still out there. Carolina still need to do something. Baker Mayfield needs to get traded. There is still, and I know they're not as big a name, as big a news, but Baker Mayfield going to, I mean, I don't know how many spots are remaining out there. There's not many, but let's say Baker Mayfield to Carolina. Well, how does that affect CMC? How does that affect DJ Moore? How does that affect, maybe not as significantly, but Robbie Anderson, Terrence Marshall Jr., These are the things that you're right with best ball, that if you're out there playing now with serious cash on the line, you are just literally gambling. You're literally gambling, because it is a crapshoot, because it is a case of there are so many moves yet to happen.
Yeah.
And there's still some good free agents. There's still some good wide receivers out there, but I still think wide receivers are going to get traded. I still think there's going to be a few that need to move on. I mean, you mentioned Devontae Parker. That's quite an obvious one now. Probably needs to move on, but there's going to be quite a few out there. And what does that do for Atlanta? Atlanta obviously need to get in there. You're saying that Philly are in there for Green Bay needs some.
Philly, we know Philly was in on Calvin Ridley. We know Philly was in on Allen Robinson. But also Philadelphia. Philadelphia's super interesting to me this offseason too, because it almost feels like they've kind of struck out here. But you look at the package that it took to get Tyreek Hill and the money. And then, Howie Roseman had his irons in on all of this. And it comes out, yes, he was in on Calvin Ridley. Yes, he was in on Allen Robinson. And all the fans are pissed off. You didn't land these guys. Well, then Jeff Mosher reports and multiple guys I think have reported this, that the Eagles weren't in on Tyreek Hill. So it gets your brain turning a little bit. We know that now that could be, they didn't want to bring Tyreek Hill's history to Philadelphia. Well, apparently they called on Deshaun Watson. So, that doesn't really register for me.
No.
But what is interesting about Philly now is they determined this price was not something they were willing to pay for Tyreek Hill, which turned out to be 5 draft picks, including a first and a second rounder, and a record-setting contract. So my wheels are turning, and they're saying to me, Philadelphia is not going to make a trade for a wide receiver that compromises their ability to make a trade for a quarterback, whether a veteran one like Kyler Murray comes available next year, or they trade up for a CJ Stroud in the event that Jalen Hurts doesn't improve this year. So that was staggering to me, because it feels like now Philadelphia is going to have an opportunity. They're not a Super Bowl contender the way things stand right now. We know that. But Philadelphia, essentially everybody in the NFC has gotten weaker around them, with the exception of maybe Tampa Bay. The Rams brought in Allen Robinson, but they might not have Odell Beckham. The Packers traded Devontae Adams. Dallas got significantly worse this offseason. So Philly is almost like, well, all right, we missed on some of our key moves, but everybody around us got worse. Like, can we make a run at this division by running it back and still have everything available next year? Well, I'm going to be fascinated with what they're going to do in the draft, because they have 3 first-round picks. I don't think, and Adam Schefter reported this today, he doesn't think Philly has any irons in the fire on quarterbacks in this year's class. But I have been working under the assumption, Murf, I would be willing to bet my life savings that Philadelphia does not make all 3 of their first-round picks where they stand right now. Mm-hmm. So currently, I think it's 14, 15, and 19. I will be utterly blown away if you were to have me on the podcast the day after the first round of the NFL draft and Philadelphia selected players at 14, 15, and 19. Maybe they make 3 first-round picks. Maybe they do it at 10, 21, and 23. Maybe they make 2 first-round, but if they make all 3 of those picks where they stand without doing any sort of maneuvering, I will be floored. I am working under the assumption that Howie Roseman is going to try to trade one of those picks for a first-rounder next year so he can but the fact that they weren't willing to pay that price on Tyreek Hill at a position where they have been basically connected to everyone tells me they're certainly in the market to not blow up their ability to maneuver next year. But, what if somebody like Tyler Lockett becomes available? And, all right, that costs a couple of third-round picks. That's something I think they'd be in on. Devontae Parker, you might be able to have him for a 6th-round pick right now. Like something like that. Just that's a team that I think's could be in at wide receiver to see. But the fact that they weren't in on Tyreek Hill is telling to me, because that means they're not going to be. They wouldn't. So, for instance, I don't think they would be in the market for DK Metcalf if he were to become available, because you would think Metcalf would probably demand maybe 90% of what the Tyreek Hill package was, given his age and his history. So that's a team that's really fascinating to me with this wide receiver market, because I mean, at the position at free agent, like it's Valdez-Scantling and who else right now? Beckham, but Beckham might not play the first half of the year.
You got all the veterans, Hilton, Green,
who might have been dust last year.
I mean, you've got a lot of the old guard who are kind of just one more deal. It's an interesting thing. You've just made me think about Philly, and the one thing that you kind of got me thinking there is quarterback next year. There is a quarterback in Baltimore who is struggling to agree a deal, who is going to be a free agent next year if he does not agree a deal. It's not looking likely he's going to agree a deal at this stage. Things change.
Yeah, that's fascinating, because, I mean, could you imagine? And I threw this out there, like when I was saying, like these teams that are loading up, the trade market for quarterbacks is something that it did not exist 5 years ago. It just didn't. And now it does. there's a little bit of an NBA player empowerment here. Like, Kyler Murray, he wiped his Instagram clean of Cardinals stuff 3 weeks ago, and then it's back 2 weeks ago. But who's to say he's not pissed off next year? Who's to say Lamar Jackson's not like, you know what? You guys, I won the MVP, and you're treating me like I'm an unproven quarterback. Get me the hell out. Like, you're 100% right. And who would have said that Russell Wilson and Matt Ryan and Carson Wentz would all be traded in the same offseason? I mean, just, it's wild. Deshaun Watson was part of that. I mean, Watson we knew was unhappy anyway, but I mean, it's wild. And like, I think you have to keep your options open for the future. And that's what Miami's doing too, by the way, because they traded all these picks, but still have 2 firsts next year. Philly, I still think is going to move on for 1 next year. You got to be able to keep your options open. And that's also a long way of going about saying, man, I've moved Jalen Hurts way up in my best ball rankings recently because it is becoming 100% obvious he's their quarterback this year.
Yeah, I completely agree. I can't believe the disrespect you've shown Case Keenum by not including him in the quarterbacks that were traded.
Oh, by the way, another more evidence that the Browns thing, not that Keenum's a bad backup quarterback, but the Browns signed a quarterback, Murf, with 37 career starts for a reason.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I mean Watson's missing 8 games.
Yeah,
you can
put that in pen
if he
doesn't get suspended.
I mean the contract did everything to tell me that he's getting banned. You don't move a guy's basic salary to $1 million without thinking he's going to get fined and therefore banned. So, completely agree. This has been a delight to do. I've enjoyed this immensely, and we've got in a lot of slang, a lot of swear words, a lot of bell ends, more bell ends than I was expecting.
And helmet means bell end too, right?
Absolutely, helmet means bell end. It's listen, it's all on the table. You told me that Liam Gallagher was your big influence for.
Well, he taught me knob jockey. that one. That is the first. That is the first one that I was like, well, if you ever saw South Park, the movie where they're like sitting in the theater watching the movie they're watching, and the crowd and I think it was, oh God, who were they called? The Canadian comedians with the mouths that open. I haven't seen South Park in a long time.
Oh, I know who you mean.
Yeah. But they're just very vulgar, and like they come up with like these curse words, and like all the kids, the South Park kids, are in the movie theater going, "Whoa!" When I saw Liam Gallagher tweet "knob jockey," I was like, "Whoa!" Like it was like mind blowing. You guys have just such better words than us, like.
Yeah, but you know what? You say that, but there's so many things that we don't do very well. And we'll leave it there. Joe, why don't you tell everyone who has enjoyed the last hour or so where they can find you, interact, buy a subscription to fantasypoints.com. And, you mentioned some of the great work and articles over there, the wins against replacement, the rankings, but just the great content from Greg Cosell and lots of great stuff. So, take it away. Tell everyone where they can get this amazing content.
Yeah, so fantasypoints.com. And we have a lot more coming. We're adding golf this year. We have some exciting things on the horizon to announce. We are expanding. We still have all the same content the thing that we really like is that we're able to kind of come in a little bit cheaper than other people at fantasypoints.com. And I think you're going to really enjoy the fact that you can get in on the early bird special right now, which is going to last you up until the draft, which is basically, it's basically 30% off of our package. But go to fantasypoints.com, subscribe. Greg Cosell's doing the NFL prospect guide. I'm literally I took time off of inputting prospects into our database specifically for that guide to do this podcast. I'm just really, I enjoy doing this. So this is fantastic, but fantasypoints.com, you'll find my content. I'm at FG_Dolan. The site is at Fantasy PTS. We are adding golf. We have so much coming down we're improving our DFS optimizer. Our DFS optimizer is in-house. We do not outsource that. We develop everything in-house. So we have it and it kind of works with our website. So we're piling a lot of money into our website. So I'm really excited about everything that we're doing. And I hope y'all enjoy it. Murf, and we need to make this a regular thing, by the way.
Yeah, we will. Absolutely. Well, I'll get you back on soon after the draft, and we can break down what Philly have done and talk about what else and what's up with the F1 season and everything else, because this has been an absolute delight. I love having you on, and we didn't even mention your Newcastle United fandom and the dirty money that they're getting.
Yeah, and their blood money. Yeah, that. But hey, there's so much cognitive dissonance that goes into being a sports fan. I mean, we just spent an hour talking about Tyreek Hill and Deshaun Watson. So
yeah. 2022 is going to come up all Joe Dolan, because Newcastle are going to get out of jail and stay in the Premier League. Everyone in the NFC gets worse, which means Philly are probably guaranteed to make the playoffs at least for another year. And so many things. So you're going to have a great year with your fandom, for sure. So appreciate you coming on. We'll get you on again soon. I promise you, we'll get it done, and we'll chat more, especially with some F1 in the season. Rush Nation, sorry this was late, but I think you'll all agree it was well worth the wait. Tune in next week. We'll be back to our regular scheduled programming, and check out all the work that we're doing over at fiverush.co.uk. You'll see lots of new writers, lots of new content. So go check them out. But until then, as always, Rush Nation, don't forget, keep rushing.